I'm going to talk about how we develop pastoral leadership teams and this whole idea of team learning. Again, if you're familiar with the Senge construct, the basic one, in kind of his seminal work, he has 4 different kinds of disciplines before the 5th discipline, which is systems thinking. 2 of them are, one is called personal mastery, and one is called team learning. So in the work that we did in Inspire, we're merging personal and team mastery and the idea of team learning in an organizational sense. But I contend, I divide the kinds of consultation that does go on now into 3 different categories. One is performance-oriented, performance-based. Do you see the difference between what we're going after in Inspire? We're working on what's going on in the interior of oneself, as well as how one connects with others. There is a consulting that they get from diocesan offices, the schools department, the religious education, about how they perform and what their skills are. There is consulting for planning. Now, in the way we go about this in church, so often that consultation takes place because there's a fire burning somehow, somewhere. It's not something that's routine and part of the system, built in as an expectation, and that's insidious. That but it's who we are, it's our culture. So when the consultant comes to help you plan, you do update your resume. Mandated consulting is the kind nobody wants. It's the kind you get when your books don't add up, when there is a crisis, and so there's some sort of remediation going on. That's what we have in Chicago and many other dioceses around the country. What we chose to work with was this idea of, and we were coming up with a need for a new language, and so the best we could do at the time this was put together, and probably even now, is this idea of consulting to the whole. And what we do when we are consulting to the whole, our eye, the eye of the consultant, is on what this parish mission is. And so we're heading down toward that, and to get there, we have to get them to get away from a task orientation mentality and be conscious about getting away from task, breaking down the silos that build up naturally, discovering assets and worth, not discovering limitations and the things that need to be fixed about us, but drawing upon their assets. And then creating a safe space where people can have conversations, disagreements, admissions of failure, to test and to learn so that they become learning communities of their own, a community of practice, so that they can engage common mission. When it works, this is what we see going on. We see that protective, face-saving behaviors tend to diminish. We are really good at protecting our face in our society to begin with, but I think church people take it to another level. We begin hearing a word more often in their conversation, and the word is we. A very important clue for the consultant. And then we hear them talking about vision and working to understand and develop vision in others, and so they engage others. So what we do in terms of a pathway, we introduce the consultant. The consultant in our project deliberately was positioned so he or she would not be identified with the archdiocese, right? Because, even though they were, and everybody knew they were, but we held meetings here at Loyola rather than at the archdiocese in the beginning. So they understood they were in a different place, and that when a consultant came to them, they would not be giving reports to the superiors at the archdiocese. And so we developed this idea of safe space. After we have that, then we get into discernment. It's amazing how quickly we got into some very deep discernments with people. There are things that went on in those conversations and commitments made that I don't know about. because we created a way for people to tell their truths. And there were some amazing truths that they had to tell. Then we would build learning plans, but learning plans in a very different way than most of us are used to learning and teaching and education. We drew from, and this is Mary's genius, Mary Elsburn, drew from Pastores da Vobis, the Pope's own document, to where he identifies 4 areas of learning, and Mary translated them a little bit for us, and I'm translating them here, but basically there are 4 areas of personal and team integration, personal and team spirituality, immersion into the tradition in terms of our theological literature, who we say we are, our scripture, and then finally the skills. My favorite story about the skills is the pastor who closed the door for the consultant, made sure no one was around, and admitted that he didn't know how to use the computer. And for his personal learning, he would like a consultant to come by in the evenings when everybody was gone and teach him where the on button was, and then further develop. A year later, he gave a PowerPoint presentation to an absolutely blown away staff. It was wonderful. Then to just plan and practice and adjust the learning and adjust the commitments, knowing that it's organic. So what we've been trying to do, and now I'm really going to try to speed up here as much as I can. Each person has work to do in your traditional staff orientation. In a pastoral team, we learn to connect the work we do with each other. The way we express this early on in the project, when you've got a staff, meetings are the result of original sin. Everybody understood that that's what meetings are about. Well, meetings become something one looks forward to because we can get better aligned and we can complement one another's work. We talked about silos. Instead, we learn ways that we can safely value, support, affirm, and challenge each other. And I think I have maybe 1 or 2 more of these. We know all about TERFs. We've all got them in our world. We look to get the borders down, the screens down, and we try to teach everybody to step back and look at the whole, which is greater than the sum of the parts. Oh, the elephants in the room. There are many, and consultants came up with this phrase, and I heard it in the first week, and these were the most gifted teams that we could find. Dan, we got some elephants. And I began finding people with skills to help these folks that I didn't think we'd have to identify. We work to create the safe space so that we can trot the elephant out from under the table and show everybody where the smell is coming from. And they give us the clues on how to do that. We know that it gets heavy and lonely. The work that we do in a parish should make us more fully human, more who we really want to be, and that is just critical to who we are. When these are the threats, I've talked about most of them. This one is nasty because we're so good at it in church. We know how to fix things. The problem with fixing is if you understand the systems literature, all you've taken care of is the surface and the surface behavior. Roiling deep underneath are all the dynamics that are going to make this blossom as a new weed in a new part of the same forest. They practice learning. They deal with threats. We call them a menagerie. There are gorillas, there are elephants, there are doves, there are all kinds of different threats. They cultivate spirituality. They make it an agenda. And here's where we are so different from the way OD is practiced in corporate life. Spirituality is around to it for the CEO and for everybody else. They are so performance-driven that they don't get to spirituality till there's been a long way down the road. Our folks get to it quite early in the process. They do aspire then to common mission. One of the indicators is that they can tell you what the mission statement is that's on the front of their bulletin every week that they couldn't tell you about when you started working with them. They learn to slow down their thinking. They learn to think slow. Hard thing to do. So they practice reflection. and they learn to engage transition, not as an enemy, but as a way of being in life. Those are the things that the consultant does with the individual persons, and you can see how it connects over to staff.